Hello, this is your host Akhil Navluri, and welcome to the brand new episode of the Techospace podcast series. In this podcast episode, I'm super thrilled and honored to welcome our guest, Mr. Kash Maharaj, who happens to be the principal enterprise architect of the company NRI Australia and New Zealand. Now, talking about Kash, Kash was, for a while he was in South Africa, and he has a huge expertise in the IT industry there. And, the recent past that he has moved to Australia, and he's based out of the same place where I'm based out in, and we both come from the Melbourne side, and that's Melbourne cloning here. So, Cash, it gives me an absolute pleasure to welcome you to this podcast initiative of mine. So, how are you, Cash? And Cash, once again, hearty congratulations for clearing off the TOGAF exam. And how would you like to
Thanks.
share that experience with our listeners here?
Yeah, Akhil, firstly, thanks for having me on the call, and hello to the listeners. TOGAF, look, TOGAF was a good experience, massive learning curve. Once you are experienced in tailoring the architecture development methodology, you use it. Uh, it you kind of pick up a little bit of bad habits here and there. So I think going back to the theory was good for me. It was a
All
good
right.
opportunity to get a lot of the missing gaps in the foundational elements. I
Mhm.
managed to plug a lot of gaps. So the certification was good, and now just basically going to start preparing for the next level.
All right. That's amazing, Cash. So, Cash, at the stroke of this hour, which is 1:41 p.m. Melbourne time, let's kick off with the podcast episode. All right,
Yeah.
then. Perfect. So, Cash, the major thing, that I'm very much keen to understand and, ask you about, I want to talk about a timeline of your journey in the IT industry. So, how would you, start and, brief me about that in detail?
Yeah, sure, man. Look, I started out, you know, I'm going to take it right back here. So, many years ago, I started off my degree in a very technical space, being BSc Computer Science and Informatics. I did a double major, Computer Science and Informatics, at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. And straight after that, I landed up going into a role at Dimension Data, actually. So I started my career off as a junior solution architect, if you want to call it, basically designing wide and wireless LAN technologies.
Hmm.
So I was basically on the communication side, building and designing communication networks, so both wide and wireless.
Right.
Dimension Data at that time um, was a new organization um,
Hmm.
in 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 my sphere, basically, and I had a good opportunity to start growing in a technical role. And then I moved out from Dimension Data not too long after that to a company called Huawei, um, who was new in South Africa at that time, around 2009, 2010. They just started penetrating the market, and they were looking for guys, that had these kind of skills. Ended up taking an opportunity to help them out,
Hmm.
and after that technical kind of work that I was doing, I moved out into PwC. I moved into the
Hmm.
consulting side of things, um, to be a little bit more business focused. And then I moved into the bank, moved into Barclays Africa, and I took on a role as a central service delivery manager. After designing these networks, after working with the customers to design things, I wanted to see how it actually felt what happens when these systems that we designed actually break or don't work. What is the actual impact to customers? And the central service delivery manager role for Africa um, gave me that understanding. I understood what it actually meant to the business, how we lose money, how our customers are impacted.
Hmm.
So I got a good foundation in that, and then I landed up moving out, being promoted to being the head of ATMs and digital channels for Barclays Africa under the retail and
Amazing.
business banking domain. And yeah, started building out some knowledge in architecture, building out the relevant domains, technology, application, data landscapes. And then, yeah, I moved out into a company called PPS, who is an insurance company, stayed in the financial services sector, and basically started helping them That was for a group lead business architect role. So basically designing the way forward to for that organization. Yeah. And now I moved over to Australia, and I am now a principal enterprise architect in a consulting company, helping clients bridge the gaps for strategies, helping them create their roadmaps, working internally within the organization to build the practice as well. So that's me. That's, where I've been, what I've been up to for the last almost 15 years in a nutshell.
Amazing, amazing. That's a very interesting journey all the way. Now, Cash, if I would just like to, understand, like, how was that feeling like, moving from, let's say, from a communications company all the way into a banking sector? How was that transition like?
Look, I think it was a good opportunity to basically move into a space where my focus actually just changed from just being solely technology focused
Hmm.
into working a lot closer with the business. I think that's the
Right.
biggest change, is I think in IT, most of the guys we get either too technical and we actually kind of forget what the business really needs sometimes. So that
Yeah.
was it for me. That was it.
Brilliant, brilliant. So basically, that was like, your that moment, that moment of truth. Like, okay, we are going too much technical and stuff, but then we need to even understand exactly like what is the business looking for. We should not, just create something, for the technical side, but understand, what is the business actually looking for. So that is a beautiful tip that, you have given to the listeners who are actually thinking of, going into the IT industry, on the whole. Now, Cash, you just shed some light before that, you are principal enterprise architect for your company. So now I will talk a little bit deep about it. So on that note, can you give me an overview about your current tenure being the, the principal EA for your company, NRI Australia and New Zealand, in depth?
Yeah. So look, I think when I moved into NRI, I took on a role within. I've been very fortunate, actually. I've worked in the consulting practice. So let me actually say, NRI is a consulting company, a tier two consulting company at that. And we focus basically on building solutions for clients, supporting them end to end. So whether it's consulting, whether it's in enterprise solutions, whether it's in managed services, we can do the full end to end solution. And I think being a principal enterprise architect, I've had the opportunity in working in multiple lines of business throughout the pretty much 3 years that I've been in the organization. So I've worked in the consulting practice. I've actually helped the executive general manager build up a brand new business unit, which is the enterprise solutions line of business, which is SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, and we work closely with a sister company called Valrada, which is our
Okay.
Microsoft line of business, basically.
Right.
Yep. And yeah, I also worked in client solutions.
Right.
So those are the deals that are the large scale deals that are 1 million and above, as an example, where you have multiple lines of businesses working on tenders and bids. So I've been fortunate in a sense to work all across the business, and I've also been fortunate in a sense that I've been working closely with customers in customer sites and helping them throughout their journeys.
That's amazing. Now, can you just familiarize me with this term of, let's say, tier two consulting company, tier one consulting company? That term is a
Mhm.
little bit catchy, but I want to understand more about it. Like, why did you exactly mention the term of that?
Okay, so tier one basically would be, the big four, Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, etc. Those guys are much larger in scale. They've got bigger pools of resources. And our company is perhaps a small, nimble company in essence. When I say small and nimble, we're all over Australia and New Zealand.
Okay.
But I guess we are nimble in the sense that we are a lot closer to the customers. We are
Hmm.
more on site. And when I say tier two, I think I also mean that um, we align with companies, large, small, medium enterprises, and we basically can work throughout the life cycle of technology.
Okay. That's good. That, I mean, that sums it all for me. Where now I just had my questions, or let's say those let's say those reservations about what exactly does this term mean, but that actually explains that in a nutshell for me. Now, I mean, let's head now. Let's go into your roots all the way, all the way to the side of South Africa. So I just wanted to understand, like, in your experience, how would you like to, compare the key differences between the IT sector of your home country, South Africa, to that of the country that you're based in, Australia?
Hmm. Yeah. So look, I think with South Africa and Australia, I'm fortunate in a sense, right? Because I've had an opportunity to work in multiple countries within Africa as well. So
Hmm.
um, I can say this. Having worked extensively in both South Africa and Australia, the contrast is fascinating. In South Africa, across the bo and across the broader African continent, you'll find incredible talent, and international expertise, actually, for that matter. But the challenge actually lies in operating in a third world context, right? There's limited infrastructure, there's budget constraints, and
Right.
I think you need to think on your feet. You need to become highly resourceful yourself. You need to learn to innovate quickly. You need to
Right.
embed frameworks. You need to embed the frameworks like TOGAF or DevSecOps in a very pragmatic way,
Hmm.
and deliver solutions that scale across multiple countries, despite the levels of digital maturity. I think whereas in Australia, on the other hand, it's a first world market, and you know it, in essence, it has allowed for, I would say, it's allowed for a lot more advanced infrastructure to access these modern platforms. Yet ironically, I guess at the same time, there's noticeable skills shortage in Australia, um, especially when it comes to enterprise architects like myself, and
Hmm.
other specialists who kind of bridge the technology and business gaps.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah, the environment, allows us to embed best practice frameworks within more structure and governance in Australia. But we also need to become conscious of, the pace of delivery, and the expectations are higher in Australia, and transformation initiatives are, scrutinized for business value quite heavily over here, because there's such a huge skills shortage. Whereas in South Africa, I don't think there's a skills shortage, or there's enough people, there's enough skills. There's Whereas over here it's very tightly managed.
Hmm.
So the key difference, I guess, in South Africa is we often build with ingenuity and resilience, and we have to find ways to make these global technologies work in pretty challenging environments. In Australia, I guess the focus shifts to optimizing, scaling, and embedding strategy. Uh, you know, and I think having the experience in both these places has given me personally a bit of a good balance. Being able to scale, and bring structure to complexities, and I guess while driving innovation and adaptability in change in these different programs. So yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess.
Hmm. That's a very good key difference between both the the likes of both the countries. Now, you even mentioned about that you had the experience of working in the in the African subcontinent as well, not the subcontinent but the continent on the whole as well. Suppose I'll give you a use case here. Suppose you are working for a company, or let's say a consulting company, and you're given the task of helping sub-Saharan country like Egypt or Algeria. Like, what are the things that you will check and let's say help out? Like, what is the sector that requires a digital transformation, or let's say the enterprise architecture on a large scale there?
Look, I think when you're working with African countries, any country, I guess, I think the one thing you need to be very cognizant of and be very wary of is the different cultures in uh, and the way they do business is very different to the way you do business or we do business. Um, so I think going in with the mindset of being able to adapt to the change in the environment, the business environment is key. And if you're going in to do any transformation type work, I think the key is to listen to what the problems are. Um, I think we get more answers. I think we get given the answers, in IT. I think a lot of the time it's customers are actually telling us what they need. And we are just those guys that kind of put these little building blocks together because we can see these are the issues. And
Hmm.
because we have this experience, we'll be able to say, okay, because of these issues you've had in the past, these solutions have worked in the past. Doesn't mean it works in the past, it'll work in the future. But I guess, we need to be able to bridge that gap from a technology standpoint. So I guess it doesn't matter which African country you work in, doesn't matter which country you work in. I think the answer is to be able to adapt to their business change and to adapt to their business environment, be able to listen. And I think if you're looking at it from an enterprise architecture, I consider myself technology agnostic, industry agnostic. It doesn't matter what technologies companies have, it doesn't matter which country I work in. I'm here to support the business to make sure that their strategic initiatives are actually correct, they're aligned, and I work closely with the PMO teams to make sure that we are designing the right programs of work for the organization so that they actually meet their vision, mission, and aim at the end of the day. And I work with the strategic executives to build their plans, visions, strategies, and I work with the PMO to make sure that it's implemented. So I guess I've built in my mindset a framework in which I operate. So it kind of, when I say I'm technology agnostic or industry agnostic, I take that same framework and I'm able to kind of apply it, and find the quick wins, short, medium, and long-term goals for companies. So
Amazing.
that's it. Yeah.
I just love the way you told, you're technology agnostic and I mean, you're like, I don't care like which country I work for, but I'm here to support. That was a very strong statement, and I really appreciate you for that, Cash. Seriously.
Yeah. No, look, and I think it's the truth. I think a lot of the guys that I've worked with in the past, in from a technology standpoint, they have the same mindset. Especially in the African countries, it's, you know, um, I guess when I was at APSA, one of the biggest milestones I guess we were working on was um, the Barclays APSA separation program.
Hmm.
And that kind of forced me to work with all these different countries, be in their countries, understand their environments, not only technology environments, but their business environments. So when you work with these countries and you work so closely with these people, you start learning that it doesn't matter which country you're in. It doesn't matter what, you just need to make sure that you understand what the end goal is. And a good team basically is all of you guys, all of us guys have the same understanding to make sure we're delivering the same end goal. That's it.
Right. That's a very good point. Now, Cash, having worked across the, let's say across the African business, I wanted to understand, did you come across any kind of compliances that, you were, let's say, restricted with? Did you have any kind of things, that stopped the work or something like that?
Mm, that's a good question. It really is a good question. And I think when it comes down to compliance, I think the most important thing is to actually understand which country you're working in and who are the regulators in those countries. And I think if you understand the regulators in the countries and you understand what company and industry you are in, I think finding the balance between um, the industry, the country, and the regulators, and the reporting, the IT risks, um, and also from an auditing perspective, what we need to make sure we are compliant to. There's a couple of things that we need to be looking at here. So, yeah.
That's amazing. That's a good point. Cash, now, Cash, heading on for this one. I mean, now we're talking. Let's go a little bit deep. Let's say into the core level of IT here. So having I mean, I just came to know that you have a lot of expertise. Let's say with the likes of Oracle SAP, Salesforce, and the Microsoft ecosystems. I just wanted to understand from your end, how do you think the role of the enterprise architecture is there to help the organization choose the and let's say choose or let's say integrate and build a value from these entire platforms on the whole? Like how would you describe that?
That's a good question, right? So I think I'm going to take one step back. Because look, as an enterprise architect, when I say I'm technology agnostic, I'm also platform agnostic. So I am not going to choose. I'm not a specialist in SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, or Microsoft as an example, but I am an individual that understands the IT strategy into that feeds into the corporate strategy. And
Hmm.
from a technology standpoint, if we're looking at understanding the actual from an enterprise architecture perspective, we need to
Hmm.
understand within the architecture is the technology architecture. What are the actual technologies and what are the platforms and the underlying platforms that we need to be able to build? Before we can build that, I guess when you're doing an as is or a baseline architecture, you want to actually understand what the applications and technologies that exist within the organization. So when we're doing this as is um, architecture, if you want to call it, um, we will look at which applications, which modules and technologies you actually have in your environment. And I guess that kind of enables us to be able to make a more strategic decision on which platform you should be looking at in the long term, whether it's SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, or Microsoft as an example. What
Hmm.
are the hyperscalers and underlying technology and cloud platforms these technologies are sitting on? So as an enterprise architect, I guess our role should not be to tell an organization what technology to use, but I guess we are the the bridge. We should be able to say, you know what, this is actually what you have within the organization because we've worked with the specialized technology architect, the domain architect, the application architect, and we've built out a good baseline architecture to see where we actually are.
Hmm.
And when we design a to-be architecture or target state architecture, um, we then work with the organization to say, okay, well, we have these baseline architecture and technology sets. If you're going to be looking to the future, because we have what we have, the best way, either because we have a SAP, a strong SAP background in the technology set that we have,
Hmm. Yeah.
probably we need to be looking at either expanding on this technology set, or as an example, you might want to remove this because you have other technology priorities in the future. So it really just depends. We should not be making those decisions. We should be guiding the decisions. We should be creating views and viewpoints that enable the company to understand the right business scenarios so that we can create the right requirements um, for them, work with them to create those requirements. But I guess um, look, to answer your question, we shouldn't be making those decisions. We should be working with the business to make the selection in the right technology by understanding the underlying technology sets, um, by looking at their baseline architectures, their target state architectures, and once those things are created, I guess we can start creating the transition architectures.
Awesome. That's amazing. I'll just flip the question for you a little bit. We're not talking about the business, but as an enterprise architecture, what is the platform that you prefer the most out of all the four?
Um, Out of Oracle, SAP, Salesforce, Microsoft.
Exactly.
Hmm. Look, I think I honestly, I'm going to say SAP. I've really enjoyed working on the platform, and I think I'm selecting SAP because of SAP LeanIX, SAP Signavio product sets, and as an enterprise architect, I'm gonna lean towards that. But I don't get cursed by by the viewers in the comments. But I'll tell you, as an enterprise architect, SAP has acquired LeanIX and acquired Signavio, and it takes enterprise architecture to the next level. and it's not domain or technology specific. It helps with Lena X will help you with application rationalization. It
Yep.
ex SAP has expanded, and I guess they have tools that we can use and implement, and it's not technology, it's technology agnostic. So it's coming from a platform that can work on any platform, which is good.
Right.
So I can say I appreciate that. So I'll select SAP for
Awesome.
now.
That's a very interesting pick, actually. I was expecting, Microsoft from your end probably, but SAP, since, just where it went, it was like off the ballpark, I would say.
Yeah, look, like I said, it's all these technology stacks have such phenomenal use cases. I'm just selecting SAP personally because I've worked in Signavio, I've worked in Linux. I understand the value, I understand the interoperability, the ease of use. So I think it's a personal decision, but I guess all these
Oh,
domains and
all right.
technology sets are phenomenal.
That's brilliant to know, and yeah, that gives me a complete insight about SAP, in a linear sense. Now, I wanted to understand from your end, Cash, like what were the key initiatives taken by you to let's say align the IT strategy with the business outcomes that that is delivering let's say a platform that supports a long term growth, and along with that it acts and it builds an architecture team that completely thrives. So what went with that?
Um, Look, I think when you're looking at what were the initiatives taken to build the IT strategy,
Yeah.
um, when it comes to delivering platforms,
Yeah.
I think honestly, just taking the step back again, as I think as an enterprise architect, our job is to be the guys that take the step back to build the strategy. To build a
Right.
strategy, you need to know the actual core vision, mission, and aim. Um, and what does the board really actually want? What is the corporate strategy being defined as? And I think, yeah, I think once you have the corporate strategy defined, and we have those, we need to start breaking those corporate strategies into um different spheres, I would say, right? Like how do we segment this corporate strategy, and how do we achieve this corporate strategy?
Yeah.
And I think what we generally break these corporate strategies into is um, little blocks that we can just actually start creating different pieces of linkage, right?
Hmm.
And I think once you have these internal IT strategies, and
Yeah.
you start building out the different domain strategies, I think the combination of all of these strategies basically put together allows you to build the right initiatives, categorizing those initiatives, prioritizing those initiatives. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think those are, kind of high level initiatives that you kind of, and the process behind building out those initiatives, to deliver the platforms, because you can only deliver a platform really once you actually understand what the actual IT strategy is, understanding your actual architecture and as is architecture. So yeah, I would say that that's it. And when the second part of your question was, to support the long-term value.
Yeah.
Um, the only way for me is to support the long-term value is by actually identifying a target state architecture. So and then building the roadmap of initiatives that lead to that architecture. And as the business grows and the customer changes, those transition architectures need to be relooked at, and budgets need to be relooked at. People come and go within the organization. So those things need to be catered for within the transition architectures. So you have a transition architecture as an example that
Yep.
might span, you know, 8 months, and within that 8 month period, there's people, technology, and process that kind of is changing all the time. So I think finding the balance between all of those things is also crucially important.
Right.
Um, and then I think if it's between multiple countries, it becomes a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is true. That is true. The complexity increases there, double fold. Now,
yeah,
yeah, and everyone, basically, Cash, everyone, has a lot of, success stories to talk about in their career. But now I'm pretty much keen to ask it from your end that, what are the success stories, or let's say that interesting anecdotes that you've experienced in your IT journey while working in the tech space of South Africa? Like what would you name out as?
yeah. I think one of the largest, I think the biggest project I've ever worked on, and probably for the longest period might ever work on, in fact, is the Barclays APSA separation program, where we were moving services, um, from the UK into 14 different African countries, each of them having their own regulatory, cultural, and operational realities, I guess, and I think challenges, I guess, were not only strategic, but I guess, again, we needed to understand the baseline architecture in a centralized operating model and design a target state for
Hmm.
a decentralized operating model.
Oh, wow.
Because you're
Okay.
taking, yeah, it's something to think about there, because it's
Oh.
basically, taking a business from the UK, moving it into not South Africa, but moving it into 14 other countries, and rebranding from a blue bank into a red bank, essentially,
Hmm.
Barclays into APSA. Um, making sure that you have the right vendors on board, you're coordinating with local teams, which we did successfully. And, our solutions were tailored and compliant and, sustainable in each of those regions. Uh, you know, and if you think about it, moving these servers and services and moving these businesses and creating these models and making sure that it's implemented is one thing. But
Hmm.
on top of that, we had a rebranding exercise,
All
where
right.
the cards needed to be changed, the ATMs needed to be rebranded, the software on those ATMs needed to change, um, and at times possibly even upgrade the ATMs and upgrade the software, the backend software on those ATMs. All of that had to be redesigned, tested, and rolled out in parallel. So, that's when days turn into nights and nights turn into mornings. Uh, you,
Yeah.
you know, pretty quickly running parallel cutovers at the same time to make sure things are working smoothly. And yeah, I guess, that's when you're dealing with 14 separate entities, each with their different risks and different priorities, coordinating across different borders, aligning stakeholders, and managing different dependencies at scale. It's a hell of a thing, and the only way to stay on top of it is 10 cups of coffee a day. No, I'm joking. It's it really is early mornings and late nights. And when you are dedicated in making a success, and you have a team that is equally as dedicated, and you're traveling at the same time, it becomes hectic. So you have to have total focus, total dedication. And, when you earn your stripes after having undergone such huge initiatives at the same time, um, l- big tasks for other companies don't seem as daunting later on. And I guess, looking back, I'm incredibly proud of how, the APSA team pulled together,
All right.
to overcome countless obstacles and deliver one of the most complex transformation programs on the continent. I would say it's probably the largest transformation project on the African continent. It was definitely one of the biggest transformation programs in the world. And it wasn't just about servers and systems or rebranding, I guess, at the end of the day. It was about resilience, collaboration, and having a shared purpose. And I guess there's a quote that, we carried with us in the team, in the ATM space specifically, and the digital channel space, as with Nelson Mandela saying, it always seems impossible until it's done. And
Mm. Yeah.
that's something that we just continuously kept saying, it just seems impossible. We just can't do this. There's too many things going on at the same time. We need to pull out, or we need to have more resources. And that's when you learn, like, throwing more resources at something, at an issue, is not always the problem. Is not always the problem solver. Throwing people money sometimes is not the solution. Sometimes it's just about actually sitting down and drawing out this pen and paper. What is it that we have? What is it that we need to do? What do our customers need? And how do we get them? How do we keep our customers happy while we transferring these back end technology sets? Um, yeah, that's the biggest, I'd say, achievement, and the biggest career milestone I've possibly ever had.
That's an amazing thing, Cash. Cash, what I feel, all these experiences that you have, talked about, I think you can, jot it down in an article, because I feel people, your readers, or let's say the connects would really be interested to know more about it. And trust me, I think this will be a super hit if you just jot it down. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think my career over the last just under 20 years has been really good. I mean, I started working before uh, I finished my degree. And what I
Okay.
can say is, from the early days, from being a developer to testing out my code, moving code into environments, making sure that it's in production and working, to building and designing networks, to working with customers, seeing how infrastructure goes down and up and how it impacts. It's it's been a journey. I can tell you that much. And I think as time goes by, um, what I can say is the big problems don't seem as big
Until it is
when it
achieved.
until it's achieved, and I think that's it. We just keep going. And I mean, I never thought that I would be part of such a huge program. I never thought I'd set up enterprise architecture practices or business architecture practices. But when you're tasked with it and you stay dedicated and focused, you get it done. It becomes achievable. And breaking things out into little milestones and building out your own plan is what's important, I guess, at the end of the day.
That's awesome, Cash. Now, Cash, so someone like me who's not, very much equipped, let's say, acquainted with the banking sector, terminologies. So, what's the difference between a blue bank and a ray bank? That's what you just came across in the first part of our conversation here.
Yeah, look, so I was saying blue bank and red bank. Um, I was just kind of giving the banks a color, I guess, because Barclays, their logo is blue, ABSA is red. In South Africa, we've got a green bank as well, Nedbank as an example. But yeah, we it's nothing too technical. It's just the logos of the branding of
Right.
the logos. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So that's a pretty good, let's say, transition from all the way from, from the blue display to the red display. Now, when you moved from the Barclays to the AXA Bank and made the entire process, or let's say, decentralized. So, I mean, was this entire program, a public sector based one, or was it a private sector based one?
Um, well, the banks really is not a private organization, so it's kind of an in between, right? Because it's not public sector as well. Maybe a
Hmm.
parastatal. I wonder if it
Hmm.
if it falls under this initiative. Um, yeah, it's not public or private actually.
Okay. Then that's a good combination. Let's say, private sector meets public sector, and it's like a semi kind of an approach, I would say.
Yeah, look, so I mean, when it comes to the financial services sector, you know, you you have to work within regulatory requirements. and you're not kind of you're governed by the government, of course. Everyone in a country is, but there are regulatory authorities uh, in which you need to kind of abide by within the bank, and then there's practices, financial services practices, and accreditations you need to have
Right.
within the bank. So yeah, it's a combination, I guess.
Okay.
Supporting the customer at the end of the day.
Amazing. That's pretty good. Now, I mean, this question is a little bit, let's say, out of syllabus. So I wanted to understand, is there going to be a crossover between enterprise architecture and robotics? I know these are two different worlds, but do you think is there going to be some kind of crossover there?
Hmm. I think enterprise architecture will form part of robotics. Robotics will form part of enterprise architecture. I think robotics is a specialized technology, uh, hardware and software
Yeah,
components.
exactly.
And I think you would probably need to have a lot more specialized skills. But I think if it's a specialized company, you might not specifically need an enterprise architect to help design those robots, but I think you're going to still need the enterprise architect within that organization to scale that organization, govern change in that organization. So we would be again a very we would be the horizontal across that organization,
All
in
right.
any organization, really speaking. But
Okay.
robotics specifically is a very niche industry, and you need a
Yeah, yeah.
specialized technology skill set to be able to be able to work confidently in that domain, I would say.
Indeed, indeed. That's absolutely a right point. Now, Cash, before we actually, conclude our podcast session, I mean, let's take a lighter approach, in the form of a rapid fire round, with a little
Yeah.
cool based approach. All this while I was bombarding you with questions about your IT, IT journey, your transition, from different sectors, and along with that, all your nuances with respect to enterprise architecture. But this time we'll go to a very different zone, which has nothing to do with technical, but just your likes and interests.
Oh, okay.
All right. So the first question to you in this rapid fire round. So, what's your favorite sports team, Cash?
My favorite sports team. Man, to be honest with you, which sport is it in?
Any sport you could just go with.
Man, I'm a Formula One guy, so my favorite team is going to be Mercedes. I've been Mercedes from, I think, before I can remember, and
Right.
yeah, that's
Awesome.
it.
Awesome. So, I mean, since rugby forms a huge part in the South African, sports culture, are you fan of the Springboks?
Of course I am. And while I'm on here, I'll use it as an opportunity to boast that we are the leaders on the board at the moment. We've won the last three World Cups, or
Yes.
we've got three World Cups under our belt. So yeah, I think as a South African, every South African supports the Springboks. We are all Bokke fans, no matter where we are in the world. So yeah, definitely.
Awesome. I mean, I don't know much about rugby, but I really like the Springboks team. Really, I've seen few interviews, and I'm a Springbok fan as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I've seen a movie also about the Springboks, about where Matt Damon has acted, and it was Morgan Freeman. So that movie, just blew me off. And that was completely about how, rugby came into the, South African sports culture. So that, just caught my attention.
Yeah, no, look, I know the movie you're talking about, and I think it has a good storyline, and it talks a lot about the changes in our country, and
Yeah,
the inclusion of different cultural backgrounds and ethnicities in the sport. So yeah, South has a long history, and I'm a proud South African, and I'm proud that we've
right.
undergone so much of change, and we continue to do so. We fight a good struggle, so we continue to do
Awesome.
so.
Amazing, amazing. Now, if I would just like to ask you, since you told you're a Springbok fan yourself, so who is that favorite Springbok, rugby player that you love the most?
Man, I'll tell you, it's definitely going to be our captain, Siya Kolisi. He's I would say his humble beginnings is something that I guess I can relate to. I guess many, or if not all, South Africans can relate to. You know, I've watched many interviews with him saying he used to play without boots, without shoes,
Oh.
and started off not having, transport to go and play, walking far distances just to be able to play. So he's had his own hardships uh,
Hmm.
within the sport, within his life, to be
Right.
able to just to be able to play the sport. And
Hmm.
being a person of color uh, in a predominantly white playing sport, he
Exactly. Hmm.
overcame many challenges and barriers and ended
Hmm.
up eventually becoming the captain of the Springboks. So I think, we've got good kickers, we've got good runners, we've got good scrum offs, good throwers, we've got good
Yeah.
everything. But I guess our captain, he's a good leader. So for me, he's my favorite player specifically.
All amazing. That's great. Now, I mean, I always ask this question to people like, what's your favorite Indian dish? But I'll do an exception for you. I just wanted to understand from your end, like, how do you compare the key differences between, the mainland Indian food and the South African Indian food? Because I'm very curious to ask you this.
Mainland Indian food.
I mean,
Oh,
the food, mainland Indian food is like, from India, and, the
yeah.
food comes from South African Indian, like, created by the Indian
Oh, so
community in South Africa. That's
so
the.
so basically Indian food and South African Indian food.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's a huge difference actually. I
Okay.
guess in when I say it's a huge difference, I think it's a huge difference because I think we make our own masalas and
Uh,
we do our own mixtures of garam masala. So I guess that varies the taste heavily. And I'm not too sure about Indian Indian food because personally I've never been there, but staying in Melbourne, I've been,
right. Okay.
I've tasted the different types of Indian food and, North Indian, South Indian, specifically the different types of food. Um, I think we also enjoy a lot hotter curries. So when I
Yes.
say it's more chili, I can't say more flavorful because the Indian food is also equally as flavorful, but I think it's different. Where ours is a lot
Mm.
more pungent, a lot more strong, a lot more chili, and
Mm.
yeah, and we've also got different types of dishes, right? Like so in South Africa we have like the bani chow. Uh,
Yeah.
do you know what that is?
I heard of it, and I really have, seen a vlog also about that, so I'm pretty much familiar with it.
Yeah, so look, I guess over the years we've changed and we adapted the dishes in South Africa. Um, Indians have been in South Africa now, I think, over 160 years.
Wow. 160 years. That's a huge age gap. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So I think we've been around for 160 years in South Africa, or 170 maybe years, 160 to 170. I'm not too sure on that one, but I'm seventh generation Indian, South African.
okay.
So yeah, I've never been to India. I will. I
Hmm.
plan to go one day and see how it looks. And I'm fortunate in Melbourne. There's more Indian people than I would have ever thought. So yeah, I still get a taste of India anyway.
Good, good. I mean, so you're getting, let's say, like a teaser of the Indian food,
Yeah,
before going to India.
of course, of course, of course, I am. Look, and I appreciate that. And I'm, I guess having had the opportunity to work in so many different countries, I really do appreciate people's culture, people's food, and I'm always willing to try. So yeah, I'm
Awesome,
very
awesome.
very grateful for that.
Amazing, amazing. Now, I mean, I'll just ask you this question. Like, if I ever visit South Africa, what is the go-to place that you would recommend me to travel to?
Of course, I'm from Cape Town, so I'm going to say Cape Town. I'm biased, but I think Cape Town. I think if you ask anybody, they're going to say Cape Town. Uh, you know, Cape Town is absolutely beautiful. It's clean, it's safe. I think a lot of people don't know that. Um,
Mhm.
we also got the real Great Ocean Road in South Africa.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, when you're talking Chapman's Peak, you're actually driving inside the mountain, like the mountain. We've cut into the mountain and built like a half pipe tunnel. So you basically on the side you're seeing the mountain and the rest is pretty much just down and it's just ocean for a long drive. It's absolutely beautiful. Then obviously there's the iconic Table Mountain, Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was held prisoner for 27 years.
Mhm.
We've got, I think, one of the largest amount of uh, variations of flowers, fynbos, in the world, and best food and best culture, man.
Amazing. That gives me an insight into, visiting South Africa now. Definitely, I would make a plan to, visit South Africa anytime in the future, given an opportunity. And yeah, and the final question to you, Cash, like, who is your favorite South African music artist?
My favorite South African music artist, I would love to say my son, but he's only 5, so he hasn't made it too big yet. But
That's
I'm
very
kidding.
sweet.
Um, my favorite music artist in South Africa, um, these guys, their name escapes me. It's so weird, but I constantly listen to them. Um, oh man, I forget their name. I forget their names. You're catching me off guard here. No, I forget their names.
I'll flip the question for you. I would just like to ask, who is your favorite music artist of any country? Who would that be?
Man, favorite music artist of any country? I guess I'm probably gonna go with Chris Brown.
Ah, yeah, that's a pretty good choice. He's a great singer. Yeah, a great artist.
Yeah, Chris Brown. I think I'm gonna say Chris Brown. His music has been with us since I was a kid. I think he's kept up with the times so nicely. The younger generation still listens to him. The older generation still know his music, and he's a dancer, music artist, producer. So yeah, for me, his dancing is phenomenal.
Awesome, awesome. That's pretty good, Cash. So, Cash, finally, thank you so much for, taking time from your busy schedule and finally making it happen. It's a mission accomplished, to do a podcast with you. So, thank you once again very much, to, being part of this podcast initiative of mine. I really had a great conversation talking to you about the South African tech ID industry, which I was never, aware of. And, this gave me an opportunity to understand more about it, your journey in the IT industry, and your take on the enterprise architecture and your preferable choice, SAP. That was something that really got my attention. So thank you once again, Cash. It was lovely collaborating with you today.
Akhil, thanks for having me. Before I go, I just did a quick search on the South African artist. It's
Yeah.
Mikasa. Mikasa.
Mikasa. Okay.
Mikasa is a group, and man, I'll tell you, powerful, powerful music, powerful lyrics, and game changer music, good beats.
All right.
If you get a chance, give them a listen to. And yeah, man,
Surely.
thank you for this opportunity. It's been great, and yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Definitely, Cash. So, listeners, on this note, this is your host, Akhil Lavluri, signing off. We would be back with another podcast episode with another eminent industry leader of the IT industry. Till then, keep listening, take care, goodbye, stay tuned, and au revoir. Thank you.